For those of you who have been living your life dairy free, like Megan and I, you can have some organic go-go squeeze yogurt. Megan's holding it up. If this is audio, I'm sorry, this is not super
No.
exciting for you. We have nothing to say for this cold open. So solidarity with all my fellow lactose intolerants out there. Let's get to the race. Cue the music.
Welcome back to Break Check. This is our second attempt. I started coughing during the first intro, but we are just finishing up the Imola Grand Prix. It was pretty eventful, a bit of a spin in the beginning and all of that, but we'll get into that in a bit. How was your Juan weekend? Weekend Juan?
I'm not editing that out.
No.
That's staying in. My Juan was pretty weekend. Yeah, it was good. What did I do? Last night it was my friend Jules's birthday party. Her birthday's tomorrow, so I went to that, hung out with some friends for a little bit, and really that's about it. I haven't done a whole lot this weekend. Oh, what am I talking about? Friday night I went to the Bulls and Bucks game.
Oh,
The
yeah.
playoff game. Yeah, I watched the Bulls lose by a lot of points. If you're watching on YouTube, again, I'm gonna make this joke, all six of you. I'm wearing my sea red hoodie. Bulls and Bucks play again in a little bit less than an hour, so we're gonna wrap this up before then, so Megan and I can go watch our respective teams, hoping the Bulls don't lose by 30 again. But my weekend's been pretty good. How about yours?
Yeah, it was good. Well, I say good. It was great on Friday. I went to Ron's, which is, classic teas. And then on Saturday, our sump pump broke and it flooded our basement. So I had a
That's
very
good.
different weekend. Yeah, but I'm packing because I'm on vacation next week. So
Oh hell yeah.
um
Where are you going?
I'll be in LA for a few days and then Houston for a few days.
Hell yeah. Also,
Yeah.
I am finally going to Greece in 2 weeks. So
Oh, in 2 weeks. That's
yeah. Yeah. So I just got over jet lag from my last little bout in Europe, and I'm going back in. So
Oh,
but yeah.
nice.
No, that'd be fun. What are you gonna do in LA?
So Netflix has this comedy week pretty much where it's called
Okay.
Netflix as a Joke. And so they have a series of comedians and podcasts and stuff doing different shows. So I have a few tickets to those. And then just visiting a friend in Houston because I've never
Oh
been
yeah.
to there either. So
No,
very
that's awesome.
excited.
I actually
Yeah.
saw something about that, the comedians thing in LA. So there's
Hmm.
the show called Bust Down on Peacock.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know who Zach Fox is. He made the I Got Depression song. R.I.P.
Okay, got it.
Betty White. She ain't dead for when she dies. That one. Yeah. So he, I think, is gonna have like a panel or something there. So I did see a little bit about that. That sounds really cool though.
Yeah, very, very looking forward to it. It'll also be nice to get some nice, normal, sunny weather because yesterday was sunny and 75, and then today it's raining, and then tomorrow it's 40. So,
Oh.
uh,
Yeah, but springtime. I will
springtime.
say though, I looked outside, all the trees and the flowers are starting to bloom, which is really
Ugh,
nice.
cannot
Yeah.
wait. Cannot
Mhm.
wait.
But yeah, so weekend was good. Hopefully Sunday's pretty good before we get back to, well, I get back to work. I don't think you'll be working for a bit,
No.
which is nice. But yeah, so the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix
I'm
had
so impressed that you said that. I was not even going to attempt to say the full name. First of all.
Yeah, so for our listeners, I speak Spanish, so I obviously can't read or speak Italian, but I can pronounce it. So I got a bit of that advantage with that, but it was the first weekend with a sprint race.
Mhm.
Megan, do you want to talk about the sprint races?
Yeah, so this is the second year Formula One is doing the sprint races. They did it last year for 3 races, and they'll do it this year for 3 races. So this was the first. Essentially, how it works is there's a 100-kilometer sprint. It's a flat out race until the checkered flag. There's no mandatory pit stops. And then this year, what's a little different is that points are awarded to the top 8 drivers. So the number one driver, whoever has pole, gets 8 points, and then it just goes down. Which is great for catching up points, especially for Red Bull, who was, so far behind after having 2 DNFs this year already. or 3 DNFs, I think, if you take them all in. But the setup for the sprint race is done in qualifying. So versus qualifying setting up the race for Sunday, qualifying sets up the sprint race on Saturday. So qualifying works the same, where the slowest 5 are out in the first quarter and so on. But Juan, do you have any thoughts on the sprint race? How do you like in them?
I think it's cool. I don't know that I would ever want all the races to be done like that.
No.
I don't even know if I would want like a majority of the races done like that.
Mm-mm.
I I'm not like an old curmudgeon purist, but I do like just the practice qualifying
Mm-hmm.
racing thing. I think it's funny because so like I play a lot of Call of Duty Warzone, and there's like the regular modes, and then like they'll throw in like different modes throughout, and I won't play them because it's not like the normal one. So that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
how I feel about the sprint, like the sprint race. Like it's not like it's cool, like it's definitely
Yeah.
cool, but I don't think I ever want it to be the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Is it is cool that they're giving out points. Maybe not as cool if you're like a mid to lower pack team because it's just more
Mm-hmm.
points for the top teams to get. I mean, like a midfield team's probably not going to win a sprint race
Right.
generally, unless they're qualifying up there. So it does feel like they're just doubling down on giving the top teams more points, which
Yeah.
I know the purpose of a lot of like the new regulations and stuff was to level the playing field, but regardless, I don't feel too strongly one way or another. I
Mm-hmm.
like it. I think it's cool to have every now and then, like if there's a track where there's not a lot of overtaking, um like I think Imola doesn't really lend itself to a ton of overtaking, especially today without DRS. It
Right.
would be cool to see one on like a large track that the
Yeah.
sprint race could have like a lot of overtaking on. I don't know exactly what races have sprint races this year, but definitely cool. Um, Hope they keep it around in a limited capacity.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be nice to see it maybe in like 3 to 5. So whether they keep it the same, or and now that they want to add more races, it would be nice to have a little bit more, like maybe 5 races. But I agree. I think it doesn't really help those midfield teams in catching up to these larger teams, because the likelihood of them getting, in that top 10, maybe even top 5, in the sprint race is pretty unlikely.
Yeah.
But
It does, if a top team
mhm.
qualifies poorly, it does give them a chance to
Yeah,
move back up the
like
field, which,
Mercedes.
yeah, like Mercedes. So it does do that, which, but again, is just kind of like an advantage for the top teams. I don't think a lot of the slower or midfield teams really benefit from it at all. So right off the bat, talking about the actual race, before we get into that, Carlos Sainz, hot off the press, 2-year
Yeah.
extension with Ferrari. Not a great debut weekend on his new contract extension. Would have
No.
liked to maybe show out a little bit more, especially because this is a home race for Ferrari.
Mhm.
But yeah, Carlos Sainz now with Ferrari through 2024. Obviously, they have gotten off to a really good start this year. Carlos, not so much compared to Charles, but Megan, what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, I'm excited for Carlos. I mean, I think he's proven himself time and time again that Ferrari, should keep him. He's a great driver. He is still, maybe not this year, just given his luck so far, but next year and 2 years, he's totally still capable of winning a world championship. And it would be silly for them to not keep him, especially because I don't know who else really they would take on if not Carlos. And they make such a great pairing. I mean, I know Mick is in the Ferrari Academy, but I think it's years before Mick is even
Yeah.
considered for a seat there. So, yeah, very happy for him. Very unfortunate start to the race though.
Yeah, I do think at some point over his contract in Ferrari, like Carlos will be there for a World Drivers Championship, like competing for
Hmm.
it. Like you said, it's one of those things where it's working so well, and it's like don't break it or don't fix it if it's not broken.
Right.
Really, it feels like the only like notable prospect they have is Mick, and I think Mick is still a ways away from being a Ferrari even number 2 driver. So I think they
Hmm.
made the right call. I think come 2024, will the F1 grid might be completely different at that point. So after that season, we can see what that looks like. But I think
Yeah.
good deal for both parties. But yeah, Ferrari tough race today.
Oh man, Carlos was so. I mean, he was doing well. He was, he could have been in that top five today
Yeah.
had he not spun out. Pretty much, Ricardo hit the curb a little too hard, and then on the wet, because it was so wet, slid a little too far right while Carlos was passing him, and that ended up clipping Carlos and spinning him out and kicking him
Yeah.
out of the race.
And it wasn't like Daniel didn't like do it on purpose. Like
No,
it
yeah.
wasn't really anyone's fault. It's just kind of like where like he didn't even like turn into him or anything. He was just
Yeah.
there. Tough start for Daniel too. Tough break
Hmm.
for both of them because as we saw, Lando finished in third, got his podium
Which is
today.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, wild, which he was able to do so because obviously Carlos was out after like turn two, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Charles was in third pretty much the whole race. And then he also caught the curb like with like two
Yeah.
laps left and he spun out. He was able to keep the car on the track or in the
Mhm.
race, which was impressive, but ended up finishing in sixth, I believe. I think he
Yeah.
got Yuki at the end.
Yeah.
Sixth and a DNF, not what Ferrari wants to have at their home race. Does it feel like they struggle at the Italian Grand Prix?
Oh, yeah. I feel like the last few years they've always had something happen, or Carlos has had, or not Carlos, but Charles has had something happen, and it usually doesn't end too great or
Yeah,
what they wanted to.
I wonder if maybe I don't want to say the pressure gets to them because like a lot of what happened today isn't really their fault.
Controllable.
Obviously Charles not crashing but spinning out, probably a little bit his fault. But
Mhm.
regardless, tough
Tough break.
weekend for the number one team in F1 right now.
Mhm.
But we can talk about McLaren. Lando finishing third.
Mhm.
Daniel obviously getting caught up with Carlos at the beginning. Was worth noting. Daniel was the first to get off his inters, his rain tires,
Mhm.
and the entire grid. Like he came
It
out,
was chaos.
he came out on the mediums. He was the only one, and immediately, like on his out lap, posted the fastest lap time, and the entire grid just followed suit. I think there was 12 cars in the pit at one point, like
Yeah,
at the
it
same
was
time.
crazy. It was just pure chaos. Like he did that, and then everyone was like immediately like box, box, box.
Yeah. No, tough race for him. Let me see where he ended up finishing. I think it was pretty far back.
Yeah, he was able
Yeah,
to
he was
catch up.
18th.
Yeah, because he was able to catch up for a bit after he switched out, and it was a good move on their part because he switched out first, and so he was able to move up a few point positions too when people were coming in, just given his speed ahead of other people that were towards the bottom. But I think what hurt him was the fact that he pitted again in like lap 40 something or maybe 50 something
Yeah.
for hards, which I thought was weird because by the time the hards start working, you're going to be so far behind in pace. And it would have made more sense to either stay on the mediums you had or switch for soft, because that's what a lot of people started doing towards the end, was switching for soft to get that fastest lap. And yeah, I thought it was a weird choice on their part, and ultimately put them at 18th. But like, what's 18th versus 15th? You're still
Right.
none the
Yeah.
difference. So
I was gonna say McLaren has seemed to be willing, like when they seem to be out of a race, like Daniel was pretty early, they're fine
mhm.
with just going, all right, hey, let's just start trying stuff out. So maybe
Right.
they wanted to get some data on the hard tires in wet conditions, something like
That's a good.
that.
Yeah.
Because like even first race, like they do not seem to care whether they come in 11th or 18th.
Hmm.
So I think maybe they were like, hey, this is a loss. Let's just
Testing
try and
opportunity.
test some stuff out. Which honestly, I don't think is a
Smart.
horrible idea. Yeah, I think
Good for
like
them.
like what purpose does it serve you to get 11th instead of 20th? And obviously, it's you don't want to be at the back of the
Right.
grid, but if it's not a regular occurrence and you know your car is going to compete the next week, yeah, might as well try some stuff out.
Right. Like maybe if DRS had been activated earlier and Ricardo was a little bit more pushy when he was in that 15th position, maybe they could have tried to push him to get to 10th.
Yeah.
And that would have been really cool to see. But the fact that they didn't do DRS until the very end, pretty much, there was just no opportunity for him to overtake anymore. So
Yeah. But Lando, our driver of the week.
yeah, woo. That was hard to pick a driver of the week. There were so
Yeah, it
many
was.
of these, like Yuki was an honorable mention, Russell was an honorable mention, which we'll get to those. But Lando, I mean, he right off the bat in that first turn got to third. He actually passed Charles, and then Charles ended up passing him back eventually, and they went back and forth a few times during the race. But otherwise, he was just cruising in fourth, and then luck would have it, he got third, and so it was a good race for him and McLaren for sure.
And McLaren has completely turned their season around.
I'm so happy for them.
Yeah, no. I think that having a leader like Zach Brown, who I do, so we talked about like Cyril and like Lawrence Stroll and like a couple different team principals and CEOs or whatever who are emotional. Zach Brown is not that. Like he is very level-headed, and I think he is a very good leader. For obviously he's not directly in charge of the Formula One team. He's the McLaren Racing CEO, so he does like their electric IndyCar. He's in charge of all of them, but I think he's a great steady presence that like doesn't get too low when things go bad, and I think he doesn't get too high when things are going good. So McLaren very much, I mean, might be the favorites for third place this year. So interested to see how the rest of their season goes.
Yeah, I'm excited for them. I think it's really interesting when you start to look now at the teams in that midfield that are maybe a little bit more level, and it really is coming down now to like both luck and the driver pairings and the who you have in your seat. So it's interesting to see because Haas, they have Kevin who's just nailing it like back to back, and then Mick is kind of a bit more behind than I think people anticipated him to be. He did not have a good race this weekend. He had his best qualifying in the sprint race at P10, which he's never had before. So it looked so strong. And then within the first 5 laps, he was almost all the way down, and
Well,
he just never.
Yeah, he spun out in that first like 2 turns. I don't think he got hit. I think I think he might have reacted when he saw everything and just spun the car out, and I think was immediately in like 20th.
Yeah. So and I think that really hurt his race. Yeah.
Yeah, tough when you get your best qualifying start. You definitely want to take advantage of opportunities like that. But yeah, great race from McLaren. Also, anyone listening, if you are interested, there's a podcast called The Ringer F1 Show hosted by Kevin Clark, and he actually just had Zach Brown on for an interview. It's like 20-25 minutes. He was there to talk about the Extreme E team. But they did talk about Formula One quite a bit, and it was actually a really cool interview. I listened to it yesterday. So definitely, if you're interested in McLaren, Formula One, just any of that stuff, I think it's definitely worth listening to.
Yeah, do you mind sending that to me? Because Zach Brown, of like all of the CEO team principals, he's like one of the top few that I would love to talk to. Like there's Toto Wolff, I would love to talk to Gunther Steiner, of course, and Zach Brown. Those are probably like my top 3.
No, it was super cool. He seems like a very interesting guy. He talks a bit about the Extreme E series too, which sounds really interesting. I might start following that a little bit. And I guess the McLaren IndyCar right now is like competing for wins, so they're doing very well. Good things happening at McLaren. Good bounce back. Very happy for them. Another team who it was a bit of a home race for them was AlphaTauri, Red Bull's junior affiliate team. Good race, decent race for Pierre. You know what? Actually, not that great of a race for Pierre. He came in 12th out of the points, but great race for Yuki. Moved up a lot. I think six or
places? 7. Yeah, 6. I think. Yeah.
Great race for them. Pierre was fighting with Lewis Hamilton the whole time because like we mentioned earlier, DRS was not enabled for a lot of this race. And real quick, before we get into AlphaTauri's race and Pierre and Yuki, there's a lot of purists who maybe not purists isn't the right word. There's a lot of people who ask, why do we need DRS? The middle of this race, no one passed anyone.
It was so boring.
For like 30 laps, nothing happened.
No.
And I think this was a good example of why they implemented it. They want to make these races more exciting, and I think we saw why it's like a good thing for the sport.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think it was just another reminder as to why we need this DRS still, even in this new era. So
Yeah, no, definitely. But yeah, so we could start with Pierre and Lewis. We can talk about
Mhm.
Mercedes too, I guess, with this.
I
They
want
go
I
ahead, go
actually
ahead.
sorry. I have a question. So I was talking to someone else about this too, and Lewis just was not in it this weekend. I don't know if you got that feeling too. He just with whether it was the sprint, the qualifying, the race in general. I know it was difficult with the no over like being difficult to overtake with the no DRS, but it also just didn't seem like Lewis was pushing anymore. And I don't know, I don't want to say, oh, it was the car because we saw Russell like what P4, P5. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on Hamilton's weekend and whether you think, maybe it was just a bad weekend for him. Do you think he's just not in it the same? I feel like he gave it all last year, so I don't know what your thoughts are.
I think my first thought is maybe something is wrong with specifically Lewis's car that they're not letting
Hmm.
on. That's my first thing. Because the difference in George and Lewis right now is substantial.
Right.
So that's my first thought. But in theory, they're supposed to have the same cars. Uh it's tough to say because he would have cleared that train of 5 cars in
Hmm.
3 laps with DRS, and he probably would have finished like seventh, eighth.
Yeah.
But yeah, not a great showing from him.
Hmm.
I do think maybe a little bit he's just like, man, I put everything into last year, and
Yeah.
I I think he's just a little spent, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
I do think he will not retire until he wins his 8th title, and I do think that happens with Mercedes.
Hmm.
I think at some point in the next like 2-3 years, they will have a car that will
Yeah.
have him competing. Um, I really don't know what to make of it because he's been incredible his whole career, and
Hmm.
he's not racing bad, but
Right.
he's not Lewis Hamilton right now.
No, it's not the Hamilton that we've seen the past 8, 9, even 10 years, really. So, yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. But I hope it's, come, that second half. Maybe it'll be something like Daniel Ricciardo last year, where after the spring break, he came and won a race. So I'm hopeful still for Hamilton. I'm sure he'll still be, you know, he'll at least win one race this year for sure. I'm confident in that.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't expect him to be competing for the championship for another year or two.
It was also it was weird because Lewis is like a really good rainy driver.
Yeah, that's another thing too. That's why I was so kind of
Yeah,
confused.
like Lewis is very good in the rain and in wet conditions, just because like I mean they always say rain is like the biggest equalizer in F1 because
Mhm.
anything can happen, but Lewis is I mean like obviously Charles and Max and all these drivers are having unreal years, but Lewis is the best driver on like he's the best driver on the grid. And there's some situations where like normally he would have taken advantage of them without thinking, and he's just not so far this year.
Mhm.
So yeah, you never know what's going on behind closed doors, but definitely a tough start to the year and a tough weekend for him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious to see too how him and Russell pair up the rest of the year because they seem to have a good relationship so far. And I, for one, and I will honestly admit that I am shocked at how well Russell is doing this year in the Mercedes, especially
Yeah.
paired up with Hamilton. I mean, I had them very different on my, overall rankings, but it is still early in the season, so there's a lot that can change.
Also, I think their age difference,
Hmm.
their Lewis Hamilton arguably being the best driver ever. You either have him or Michael Schumacher. His like stature in the sport, George is going to be the number 2 driver until Lewis retires. Like when they have a
Yeah.
fast car again, Lewis will be the number 1 driver.
Yeah.
I think there's a very clear understanding from both sides that like there's not like I don't really know how to put it into words, but like they're gonna get along just because like they both know what it is
Mm-hmm.
George knows that that's Lewis Hamilton. Lewis knows that, hey, this guy's the future, and he only has so many. Lewis only has so many years left. So I think it's a good driver pairing.
Yeah. It's similar to the Ricardo Norris pairing where you have one driver who's been in it for like over 10 years and then another driver who's been in it for maybe 3 or 4 years. And there's a lot that they can learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't think that's necessarily like, oh, it's a mentor situation like it would be with Bottas and Zoe. Because Bottas and Zoe, like Zoe is a rookie. And then with Norris and Russell, I feel like they're both fairly confident and have the same drive and just like confidence that the older drivers do, which can cause some tension. But I think that's also really beneficial for the teams too, that they know they have two usually reliable people in their seats.
Yeah, and I mean, like even when they were competing, when Lewis had Valtteri Bottas as his teammate, and like they were closer in like points and skill gap or whatever. Like Lewis got along pretty well with Bottas, and Bottas got along. Obviously, there is like some grumblings, like Bottas saying he wants to win too, but like I think it helps. Lewis seems pretty easy to like get along with. So yeah, interested to see how their like driver pairing dynamic works years down the road, but I think for now they're just kind of always going to get along.
Yeah. Real quick before we get into Aston Martin, want to of course shout out to Bottas. He had a pretty good race this weekend. It's great to see, like I've said in other podcast episodes before too, it's great to see him doing so well out of Mercedes, because I feel like people, suspected or thought when he leaves Mercedes, he might not be competing as highly, or up in that top field. And it's nice to see him, up there. And he's been ahead of Hamilton for a lot of it.
Yeah, Valtteri Bottas is a really good driver. I'm interested to see. So obviously it's his first year with Alfa Romeo, and the Alfa Romeo car looks
fast.
like it's fast. Yeah, like it's not slow. He almost caught George Russell at the end there. Curious to see what the rest of Bottas's career looks like, because I mean, maybe not like a world driver championship like threat, but I could see him finishing like third at some point if that car keeps getting faster, or if like a faster team wants to pick him up or something like that. He had a really good race. But Aston Martin, I think now every team has scored a point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think every team has scored a point at this point.
Because I think they were the only one that haven't, and then now they have some from both drivers.
Both drivers double points.
Even more exciting. Good for you, Stroll.
Yeah,
that one.
snuck in in 10th. How close was he to Albon in 11th?
Oh, that's a great question. I really don't know.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure as well. But Stroll got in the points. Not sure I thought we were going to see that at any point. Do you think this is just a good weekend for them, or do you think maybe we can see them competing a little bit more?
I would suspect to see Vettel still competing up there again. Maybe not consistently. I don't think they have a reliable car. I think it was a very good weekend for them, but I do not think that their car will be regularly competing in that upper field, even like upper midfield. So, curious to see. I was, I was impressed by Stroll. I was so confused when I saw him. I was like, where is he? And I was looking at the bottom and I was like, oh no, he's in 10th.
Yeah. Here's a question. Who finishes? Because I think they're the two slowest teams. Who finishes ahead of the other one? Williams or Aston Martin?
Aston Martin, I think, will be ahead of Williams.
Okay. Do you think that is a car thing, or do you think that's a driver thing?
Oh, it's got to be both. I mean, it's because Albon can't carry the Williams team with points. Similar with Haas, Kevin can't carry the Haas team with points.
Right.
So I would suspect Aston Martin will be a little bit up there, because even though we give Stroll and Latifi a lot of shit, Stroll this year has been doing, I mean, even given his like not checking his mirrors and doing just like childish, things on the track, I still think Stroll will be ahead of Latifi, and that automatically will make Aston Martin ahead of Williams.
Not a ton to talk about with Williams this week, but let me just say, Latifi did not crash, but something came off his car.
Yeah. And
And
Albon's brakes exploded during
yeah,
qualifying.
yeah. So I don't know what's going on over there.
Man.
But they like every weekend, it's
Mhm.
just something.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, not really anything to write home about. Alex Albon was stuck in that train of cars that couldn't pass each other because they
Yeah.
didn't have DRS. So he ended up finishing in 12th or no 11th outside the points. Yeah, I think we're starting to wind down here. Do we have anyone to talk about besides for Red Bull left?
That was really all I had that I wanted to note, I think. Yeah. So we could probably talk about Red Bull. They had obviously a great weekend. I feel like it's either or. They either have an incredible weekend and they're both on podium or on the podium, or one or two of them are DNFing and, struggling to make it into points.
Yeah, 1-2 finish. They are now second in the constructors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wonder if the driver standings have changed at all because I know Sainz was in second going into the race.
Yeah, they haven't posted. I checked right before we started recording and they hadn't posted it yet.
Yeah, normally I would do the math in my head, but the
Yeah.
sprint race is like
Sprint race kind
yeah.
of it'll do something. So
Obviously a perfect weekend for Red Bull. So
Mhm.
here's an interesting thing. The other week when Charles Leclerc got the Triple Crown, I said that every driver for the last, I think, 20 years who has gotten a Triple Crown has gone on to
Mhm.
win the Drivers' Championship. Charles got one. Max has now also gotten a Triple Crown.
Oh no.
So that streak will be broken. So I think for the first time in a while, we're going to see someone win a Triple Crown and not win the Drivers' Championship. So that begs the question.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the Ferrari
Mm-hmm.
has been unreal and Charles has been driving crazy.
Yeah.
If Red Bull figures out their reliability issues, which
Mhm.
step in the right direction, is Max faster than Charles?
Who got
He has
I
won every race he's finished.
yeah.
That's
That's
he's batting 1,000.
Oh no. Yeah, that's hard because I mean realistically, I think if you look at both of their careers, Max is the faster driver and he is
Mhm.
consistent in being the faster driver and has won more fast laps than Leclerc. But I do think that there's going to be so much more that plays into it. And even with Max being the faster driver, I still think Leclerc is in it for the world championship.
Another thing to keep in mind, Ferrari is notorious for not having great mid-season upgrades. Do you
No,
think that can catch up to them this year?
100%. I would not be surprised if Red Bull ends up taking the lead for a little bit in the midseason, especially because you have Monaco coming up, and that's like a
Charles is
cursed.
not going to finish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is not their time of year. So, but the Miami one is the next one. It's in 2 weeks. So, yeah. So there's that. That'll hopefully it'll be interesting because no one's obviously raced on that before, so it's hard to kind of
Yeah.
predict on like what could happen because it's a new track. But that'll be really interesting to see.
I think it's kind of obvious for those who have listened to us. I'm not the biggest Max Verstappen fan. Like, it's not my favorite driver, but I would be stupid to not admit he looks like it's still early, but he kind of looks like an all-time great. Like,
Mhm.
he looks like a multiple time world driver championship since he
Mhm.
was young. I think if they figure out his car, I think he's gonna win.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
My early mid-season prediction is that Max Verstappen wins the world driver championship.
Okay.
So I'll go on the record.
All right, I'm batting Leclerc and Max P2, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I have a feeling it's going to get close.
I already know I'm wrong from for start of season predictions before anything happened because I had
Did we both have Lewis winning?
We both had Lewis.
Which I mean, it felt like he was just gonna.
Yeah, it made sense. It made sense. They've been doing so great. They, still won the Constructors' Championship. Lewis was going to be coming back for a vengeance. and the storyline, the plot. I mean, it would have been amazing, but no, they haven't been there yet. So
Yeah, it's tough. We'll see. I think the race is gonna close up a little tighter because I mean Max got
a lot of
what?
points because he
Yeah,
got 8 from the sprint and
and he
then
got
the
the fastest
33.
lap time.
Oh, and he fastest
So he
lap
got
and the
35 points because it's 8 for the sprint, 26 for the win, 1 for the fastest lap time.
Yeah,
That's 35. That's a lot of points. I
that's a
mean,
lot of points. That's closing the gap.
Leclerc was 40 up on
Yeah.
Carlos. Carlos didn't score. So I think Max will be second now. Checo will probably be third.
Yeah, and then Russell is probably 4th or 5th because he was second for shockingly a hot minute, but
yeah, I think Lando will also now be like
pretty
5th.
up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, wild weekend. I was not expecting Ferrari to really suffer like that, but
No.
excited for Miami.
Yeah, I cannot wait for that one.
Yeah, it'll be really cool. Do you know what time that race is at?
I want to see either 2 or 3 because they normally race in the afternoons, so it would be our afternoon time. Unfortunately for everyone in Europe and in Australia, they're watching it like late at night or early morning. But
good riddance. I'm go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I kind of honestly enjoyed the morning, so I don't mind being here and watching it. So, but
I will be coming back from a very long flight, but I will get to go to bed when I come back, and I will wake up and I will watch the race.
Yeah, I think I fly in from Houston that morning, so I will.
Gone for 2 weeks?
Or no, is it? What day is the next Grand Prix?
It's May 8th. It's next Sunday, actually.
Okay, so yeah, so I leave on the 30th and I come back the 8th. So yeah, no, I fly in that morning. I'm gone for 9 days or 8 days or something like that.
We might have to figure something out. I am going to be in Greece.
Oh no. Oh, this is tricky. Okay.
We'll figure it out off camera.
Yeah.
Maybe
what days are you in Greece?
6th to the 14th.
Oh.
I didn't think about that. We'll figure it out. Maybe we'll handpick an honorary co-host for that weekend.
Yeah.
Have a little cameo appearance in my place. We'll figure something out.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Yeah, we got like 2 weeks, but yeah, no, excited for Miami. Predictions
for Miami. I think someone from AlphaTauri will be in the top 5. I think trying to think of like who does well in new situations like that. Maybe Kevin. I think Kevin's going to be up there again, and I think Sainz is going to be on a podium. I'm not saying a winner because
sure hope so.
I said Sainz I think last time, and he was out first lap. So how about you?
My prediction: Checo wins.
Oh, a Checo win. That would be
Miami.
good.
Miami is like Mexico 0.2. Checo wins. Yeah.
It's a second home race.
I think he's gonna have a lot of supporters out there. Yeah. Go ahead. You froze out a little bit.
Good. No, I was gonna say the climate too. It also helps knowing that the temperature, because that impacts the drivers too, just driving in the different climates. So I think that'll be really helpful.
We also might see rain because it rains like once a day in Florida.
Oh, you're right.
Like for like an hour.
Yeah.
For all of our European friends and listeners, Florida is not a real place. It is. I know to non-Americans, Miami sounds like a grand place. Florida is not a real place. It is insane there.
Not just Disney World. That's a new world. It is like all of it.
It is like the wildest weather ever. It is a bunch of old people who look like leather couches.
Look up Florida news or just articles or daily news, and you'll see just wrestling alligators.
Yes, a fun game is Google Florida man and your birthday, and something crazy will come up. Here, you know what? Let me do it live on camera. Hold up. Let's see. Florida man, September 4th. Florida man, September 4th. Here we go. Florida man flashes buttocks at IHOP impersonating a police officer to get free food. So try that out. Let us know what you get. Leave a comment.
If you made it this far, let us know what your day was.
Florida man flushes buttocks at IHOP after impersonating a police officer to get free food. See if you can top that. Let us know.
Classic.
Any last thoughts, Megan?
No, nothing after that. Can't top that. But
All right.
Thanks, guys, for listening.
Yep. We will see you, or at least Megan, in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Actually, no, probably next week. We'll probably do another team episode.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll talk soon.
Yeah, we'll see.